Close your eyes for a brief moment and imagine the suffocating heat of the nights in Judea, where the aroma of myrrh and dust mingles with the dense silence of a humanity that still groped for the divine under the mantle of the stars. But imagine now that, in the darkest corner of this room, a pair of amber eyes glows with a lucidity that does not belong to this earthly plane. For what I am about to reveal to you today is a secret that the stone cathedrals and censored scrolls tried to bury, under millennia of dogma and purposeful oblivion. Have you ever felt, deep in your marrow, that when your cat observes you fixedly, it is not just tracking the movement of your eyes, but rather scanning the vibrational frequency of your very soul, stripping bare your darkest secrets and your purest lights with a divine indifference that borders on the transcendental? There is a lineage of Gnostic knowledge whispered only in the deepest circles of early Christian esotericism that suggests that the Nazarene, the one who walked on water and spoke with the wind, maintained a relationship of profound respect and mystical revelation with small felines, seeing in them not simple beasts of burden or companions, but rather biological sentinels of the pleroma, guardians of portals that our senses, dulled by the flesh, cannot even conceive. Prepare your spirit, for in the next few minutes I'm going to tear away the veil that covers the truth about why Jesus saw in cats the only beings capable of moving freely between the kingdom of light and the density of matter without getting lost in the illusion of the ego. And I promise you that, at the end of this journey, the way you view the small predator purring in your lap will be transformed forever, ceasing to be a pet to become the silent master it has always been, while you will understand the visceral connection between the stillness of the master and the immobility of the cat. The mystery that summons us today does not reside in written words, but in the empty spaces between them, in the same frequency where the purring of a cat acts as a mystical tuning fork, capable of aligning the chakras and purifying the aura of an entire house, something that the Christ understood as the true alchemy of vibrational healing. Imagine the hands of Jesus, hands that healed lepers and multiplied loaves, resting on the soft fur of a feline on the slopes of Bethany, feeling the pulse of a soul that, unlike the human soul fragmented by the fall, remained intact and connected to the original source, acting as a spiritual filter that absorbs the negative miasmas of the environment to transmute them into pure light through its rhythmic breathing. This knowledge was hidden because a being that cannot be domesticated by fear or guilt, as is the case with the cat, represents a direct threat to the structures of control that surround institutionalized religion. For the cat is the living symbol of individual gnosis, of the sovereignty of the soul that recognizes the divine within itself without needing intermediaries. The Nazarene saw in the slit eyes of these beings the sacred geometry of the universe and the ability to see the invisible, the archons that surround us and the currents of energy that flow through all creation, treating cats as small exiled lions that, although they live in the mud of this material world, never allowed the dust of Malkuth to soil the purity of their celestial essences. Are you ready to understand the hidden mechanics of the feline soul and how Jesus used this wisdom to teach his closest disciples about constant vigilance and the deep meditation that leads to absolute enlightenment? Understand that we are not talking about folklore, but about a spiritual anatomy where the cat functions as a metaphysical lightning rod, and Jesus, in his infinite wisdom as the incarnate Logos, recognized that these beings were the only creatures that were not expelled from Eden, but who chose to leave on their own, to serve as discreet guides to humans lost in the labyrinth of the mind. What you will hear now is the echo of a forbidden truth, the frequency of a time where the divine and the animal touched without the barrier of prejudice, revealing that the soul of the cat is, in its essence, a mirror of the pleroma itself, shining in the darkness of our ignorance. Diving even deeper into the subterranean currents of this forgotten knowledge, we need to understand that the Nazarene, in his long vigils in the deserts of sand and spirit, perceived that the cat operates in a frequency band that humanity, in its fall into density, ended up completely ignoring. While men fought against the shadows of their own egos, Jesus observed how felines glided through the cracks of time and space with a fluidity that suggested they simultaneously inhabited multiple dimensions, acting as biological bridges between the coarse matter of Malkuth and the sublime emanations of the Pleroma. There is a Gnostic oral tradition that suggests that Jesus saw the purring of the cat not as a mere expression of physical contentment, but as a sacred technology of sound, a healing frequency that resonates with the primordial vibration of creation, capable of disintegrating the astral larvae and negative thought forms that attach themselves to the human aura like invisible parasites. Imagine the Christ, the Master of Mysteries, explaining to his most intimate apostles, such as John or Mary Magdalene, that the cat is the only being that does not project a spiritual shadow, for its essence is so perfectly aligned with the light that it absorbs the darkness around it without letting itself be contaminated by it. For Jesus, the soul of the cat was a living example of divine self-sufficiency, a being that does not seek external validation because it carries within itself the complete spark of consciousness, a silent lesson that true gnosis is not something to be achieved through external rituals, but an internal discovery of sovereignty and silence. He understood that the eyes of cats, with their pupils that dilate and contract like the rhythm of galaxies, are true observatories of the invisible, capable of detecting the presence of archons and unbalancing entities that try to interfere in the human journey, which is why the cat was seen as a guardian of the home, a sentinel that protects the sleep of the righteous, filtering dream energies and ensuring that the spirit of man can travel through the celestial spheres during rest without being intercepted by the forces of duality. The Nazarene saw in the silent and precise walk of the feline the perfect metaphor for the soul that has reached the state of nepsis, spiritual sobriety, where every movement is calculated, every breath is conscious, and no energy is wasted in unnecessary conflicts with the world of appearances. In the deepest apocryphal texts, it is suggested that Jesus compared the untamable nature of the cat to the very nature of the Holy Spirit, which blows where it wills and cannot be enclosed in cages of dogma or human moral laws. For the cat lives beyond good and evil, in a state of primordial innocence that precedes original sin and the fall of consciousness. When you look at your cat today, know that Jesus saw there a master of moving meditation, a being that understands the geometry of space, and that uses its whiskers as antennas to capture the whispers of the logos that permeate the universe, transforming the simple act of existing into a continuous prayer of presence and power. He taught that, unlike dogs which represent loyalty to the external master, the cat represents fidelity to the internal master, to that silent voice that dwells in the core of being, and that does not bow to anything that is not the absolute truth of the light, making these animals the true companions of the path for those who, like the Christ, seek liberation from the chains of this demiurgic world. This depth of understanding reveals to us that the cat is not just an inhabitant of your house, but a spiritual voltage transformer, a small alchemical engine that Jesus respected as an equal in the order of pure consciousness, reminding us that to enter the kingdom of heaven, we often first need to learn the stillness and silent majesty of the feline soul. Advance with me now to the dusty corridors of time, to the years of exile and silence, in which the Nazarene traveled the mystical lands of Egypt, where the temples of Bastet still resonated with the echoes of an antediluvian wisdom that recognized in felines the invisible architects of psychic stability. It was under the scorching sun of Heliopolis that Jesus understood that the cat is not merely an inhabitant of the physical world, but a being that possesses a septenary constitution of perfectly harmonized subtle bodies, something that most human beings take millennia and countless incarnations to even try to touch. He saw in the cat's spine a living representation of Jacob's ladder, a bioelectric structure capable of conducting the energy of Sophia from the base of the earth to the top of the skull, with an efficiency that defies the laws of spiritual thermodynamics, allowing these beings to operate in a state of constant wakefulness even when they seem plunged into the deepest of sleeps. You need to understand that for the Christ, the act of a cat licking its own fur was not a simple gesture of instinctive hygiene, but rather an alchemical ritual of friction and magnetism, where the animal uses static electricity to realign its auric field and remove the ethereal impurities that accumulate when passing through the shadow zones of this world. Jesus taught in secret that cats are the only beings that possess a Archon heart of crystal, a secret chamber in their spiritual essence that acts as a transmuter of pain, where they absorb the suffering and anguish of human environments to transform them, through the vibration of their vocal cords, into a frequency of peace that stabilizes the fabric of reality around them. There is a detail almost never mentioned in the canonical Gospels, but preserved in the oral traditions of the deserts. Jesus frequently pointed to the tail of a moving cat, explaining that that limb functioned as a rudder in the invisible currents of the astral, allowing the feline to swim through the waters of the spirit without ever drowning in the illusions of the Demiurge. He saw in the eyes of cats the exact color of the pleroma, a light that does not come from the physical sun, but from a central sun that illuminates only those who have conquered inner vision. And for this reason he stated that the cat is the only animal that does not fear the darkness, for it knows that darkness is only the absence of a consciousness that has not yet learned to light its own lamp. Imagine the Nazarene describing how cats, when walking, touch the ground with a geometric precision that avoids the dispersion of energy, each step being a silent prayer of grounding and power, teaching his followers that to be masters of themselves, they should possess the same emotional independence as a feline, which loves without enslaving itself, and which serves the divine without submitting to the whims of men. He revealed that the soul of the cat is a direct emanation from the higher aeons, sent to this plane to serve as a metaphysical alarm system, for when a cat refuses to enter an environment or fixes its gaze on an apparently empty point in the air, it is denouncing the presence of breaches in reality, where parasitic entities try to feed on the vital energy of the unwary. Jesus treated these animals with a reverence that bordered on the sacred, for he understood that they are the guardians of the keys of silence, and that only through absolute silence, that same silence that a cat maintains while observing prey or contemplating the infinite, is it that man can finally hear the voice of the Father who dwells in secret. Feel now the depth of this revelation. When you touch a cat, you are touching a living bridge that the Nazarene recognized as one of humanity's greatest allies in the search for enlightenment, a being that does not need scriptures because it itself is a living text written by the hand of wisdom itself, waiting for us to have eyes to see and ears to feel the cosmic symphony that emanates from its majestic and solitary existence. The mystery deepens when we realize that, in the early Christian and Gnostic vision, the cat was the symbol of daily resurrection, for it dies to the external world every time it closes its eyes, only to awaken in dimensions that the logical mind cannot even map, bringing back with it the colors and textures of a kingdom where time does not exist, and light is the only law that governs life. Consider now, under the flickering light of the truth that the ages could not erase, the mystery of the feline soul as a living condenser of spiritual electricity that the Nazarene called, in restricted circles, the sapphire filter, a metaphysical structure so complex that it defies the understanding of those who see only with the eyes of the flesh. Jesus explained to his initiates that, while human beings struggle to maintain their auric integrity against the constant attacks of the Archons and the egregores of fear that saturate the earthly atmosphere, the cat possesses a natural defense system that makes it immune to psychic pollution, acting as a biological vacuum that sucks in low-frequency residual energies to transmute them in its ethereal solar plexus. You must have noticed, with a strangeness that now begins to make sense, how your cat chooses to rest exactly in the spots of the house where the energy seems stagnant or heavy, and Jesus revealed that this was not a search for comfort, but rather the fulfillment of a silent priestly duty, where the animal positions itself as a seal of protection, absorbing what he called the miasmas of the abyss, so that the humans around it would not be consumed by melancholy or the infirmity of the soul. The Nazarene saw in the soul of the cat a spark of Sophia that refused to be totally imprisoned by matter, creating a body that is half substance and half frequency, which explains why these beings seem to defy the laws of gravity and perception, moving in spaces that seem non-existent to us. He taught that the vertical pupil of the cat is, in fact, a rift to the absolute, an optical instrument designed to observe the currents of light that flow between the aeons, allowing the feline to see not only the shape of objects, but the vibrational signature of each living being, instantly recognizing if a person is in communion with the Logos or if they are just an empty shell moved by the desires of the Demiurge. There is a whispered tradition that, on the nights when Jesus withdrew to the Mount of Olives, he was not alone in his vigil, but was frequently surrounded by these silent guardians who formed a circle of energetic containment, preventing the forces of darkness from interrupting his communion with the Father. For cats, with their extreme sensitivity, are capable of detecting the approach of incorporeal beings from miles away. Jesus saw in the act of purring a primitive and powerful form of vocal intonation, similar to sacred mantras, which possesses the ability to repair biological tissues and align the force centers of the human body, treating the cat as an invisible doctor who, by lying on a sick part of your body, is actually performing vibrational surgery, using its own vital energy to restore lost harmony. He explained that the soul of the cat does not go through the process of fragmentation that afflicts the human soul after death, but returns whole to a dimension of rest and light, from where it can choose to reincarnate to continue its mission of vigilance, which explains the strange feeling of recognition that you feel when looking into the eyes of a cat newly arrived in your life, as if a millennial friendship were being resumed without the need for a single word. Understand that for the Christ, the cat was living proof that spiritual sovereignty is silent, and that true authority does not need to be imposed by force, but emanates naturally from a being that knows its divine origin and does not let itself be seduced by the illusions of glory or power of this world, making each small feline a miniature master who invites us at every moment to abandon the masks of the ego and embrace the nakedness of our own luminous essence. This mystical perception of Jesus about cats reveals that they are the diplomats of the invisible, beings that possess a free pass to travel through the celestial palaces and the deepest caves of the human psyche, always maintaining that sacred indifference which is the pinnacle of Gnostic wisdom, the ability to be in the world without being of the world, a teaching that the Nazarene personified and that he saw mirrored perfectly in the untamable and eternal soul of every cat that crosses our path under the sun. And now we penetrate the most secret sanctuary of this revelation, where the Nazarene unveils the mystery of the 9 lives not as a vulgar superstition, but as a mathematical truth about the persistence of feline consciousness through the folds of time and space. For Jesus understood that the soul of a cat does not dissolve in the ocean of oblivion, like most essences that succumb to the cycle of forced reincarnations. He explained that the cat is a master of anamnesis, the recovery of divine memory, possessing the unique ability to retain the wisdom accumulated in its previous passages, which confers on these beings that aura of millennial elders contained in small and agile bodies, a living proof that eternity can inhabit the ephemeral without losing its majesty. Imagine Jesus pointing to the vibrating whiskers of a feline under the moonlight of Galilee and revealing that those filaments are not just tactile sensors, but metaphysical antennas tuned to the music of the spheres, high-precision instruments that measure the density of the ether and alert the animal to fluctuations in the will of the Logos, allowing them to know, long before the prophets and seers, when a great spiritual event is about to break the veil of physical reality. The Christ taught that, while man needs years of asceticism and prayer to purify his pineal, the cat is already born with its mystical gland fully active, which makes it a natural inhabitant of the kingdom, seeing angels and demons with the same naturalness with which we see trees and stones. And it is for this reason that the Nazarene frequently sought the company of these beings during his moments of greatest trial, for the gaze of a cat served as an anchoring point in absolute truth, a reminder that beyond the suffering of the cross and the limitations of the flesh, there exists a freedom that no demiurgic chain can contain. In the inner circles of Gnosticism, it was whispered that Jesus considered the cat as the guardian of the exiled Sophia, for the feline personifies the feminine aspect of divinity in its wildest and most independent form, that which does not let itself be domesticated by patriarchal systems of control, and which maintains its purity even in the midst of the mud of the material world. He described the bone structure of the cat as being composed of a sacred geometry that allows the channeling of the pneuma, the sacred breath, so that the simple walking of a cat on the soil of a city functions as planetary acupuncture, sealing cracks in the Earth's energy grid, through which the forces of chaos try to emerge. You must realize that when your cat follows you from one room to another, it is not just seeking food or attention, but is, in Jesus' view, monitoring your vibrational signature and acting as an invisible shield, positioning itself strategically to intercept any flaming darts of negativity that may be launched against your spirit. The Nazarene saw in the deep sleep of cats a form of conscious astral travel, where they report to the celestial hierarchies about the state of human consciousness, acting as silent advocates of our species before the court of light, justifying our existence through the pure and non-judgmental love they dedicate to those who prove worthy of their trust. This knowledge was kept under 7 keys, because it reveals that divinity is not only in temples of gold, but breathes and purrs beside you, suggesting that salvation can be as simple as learning to observe the world with the disidentification and total presence that your cat demonstrates when observing a falling leaf. Jesus wanted us to understand that the cat is the archetype of the perfect initiate, the one who knows the secrets of the night but walks in the light, the one who has claws to defend himself but chooses the softness of touch, and the one who, although he seems solitary, is in constant communion with the totality of the universe, transforming every moment of his existence into a celebration of the ineffable mystery that sustains us all. Prepare your heart, for when you stroke your cat next time, you will be touching a living relic, a fragment of Eden that Jesus preserved, so that we would never forget that the kingdom is among us, hidden in the stillness of a feline gaze that sees all and judges nothing, only transmutes and illuminates with the patience of the centuries. And as the shadows lengthen over official history, we need to descend to the basements of consciousness, where Jesus, the master of the invisible, revealed that the cat is the only being capable of performing the metaphysical feat of projecting its consciousness beyond the fire barrier that the Demiurge installed around this planet to keep us prisoners of ignorance. The Nazarene taught that while the common man is a slave to linear time, the cat lives in Kairos, God's time, where the past, present and future collapse into a single point of absolute presence, and that is why they never seem to be in a hurry, for they have already arrived where we all desperately try to go through rituals and grueling prayers. Imagine Jesus describing to his disciples the subtle anatomy of the non-pour of light, explaining that every step a cat takes in your house is actually an act of dimensional sealing, where the pads of its paws, saturated with a form of magnetism that modern science still does not understand, close cracks through which fear and anguish could leak from the astral plane into your physical reality. There is a Gnostic secret almost forgotten about why Jesus was born in a manger, surrounded by animals, and the occult tradition states that the presence of felines in that environment was not accidental, but necessary to create a cocoon of vibrational purity that protected the newborn from the dense emanations of Herod and the forces that wished to extinguish the light of the world before it even shone. The Nazarene frequently referred to cats as the Chow's little Christs of the animal kingdom, for they carry the mark of impeccability and the ability to forgive the environment without carrying the weight of resentment, transmuting human hatred into a sovereign indifference that is the very pinnacle of spiritual liberation. He explained that when a cat kneads or makes biscuits on your lap, it is not just seeking comfort but is actually performing an etheric massage on your vital field, stimulating the flow of Kundalini energy and removing the blockages that prevent the light of the spirit from circulating freely through your nervous system. For Jesus, the fixed and penetrating gaze of a cat into the void was irrefutable proof that the veil that separates dimensions is porous, and that these beings act as diplomats who negotiate our safety with the entities that inhabit the intermediate regions of the cosmos. He saw in the act of a cat hunting shadows not a predator's instinct, but a guardian's duty, where the animal captures and dissolves fragments of negative egregores that, if left loose, would transform into nightmares or psychosomatic illnesses in the inhabitants of the house. The soul of the cat in the Christic vision is composed of a substance called Thakun's adamantine ether, which does not wear out with use and does not become corrupted with evil, functioning as a beacon of integrity in a world of fragmentation. Jesus said that the cat is the only one who knows the secret name of the wind and the exact color of silence, and that by observing its total surrender to the present moment, we are before a living manual of enlightenment that does not use words, but rather the pure emanation of being. He revealed that at the end of time, when the human soul has to cross the narrow bridge over the abyss, the cats we love and respect in this life will be there, waiting for us on the other shore, acting as the spiritual compasses that will guide us through the last illusions of matter to the definitive encounter with the ineffable light. For to the Nazarene, no love dedicated to these creatures is wasted, each gesture of affection being a seed of light planted in the garden of eternity that will bloom as a portal of return to the pleroma. Feel the gravity of this truth. You are not the owner of your cat. You are the student of a master who accepted the disguise of an animal to whisper to your spirit, through silence and purring, that freedom is possible, and that the kingdom Jesus spoke so much about begins exactly where your ego ends, and the acceptance of the wild and divine majesty that shines under the fur of the one who now, perhaps, is observing you with the same depth with which it observed the Christ himself in the nights of Judea begins. Consider now, under the sacred weight of this knowledge that the ages tried to suffocate, the final revelation that the Nazarene reserved only for those whose ears were no longer deafened by the clamor of the world. For Jesus understood that the bone anatomy of a cat is not merely biological, but rather a crystal harp tuned to the frequency of the original Logos. He explained in whispers, while the stars of Judea witnessed the invisible, that each vertebra of the feline acts as a resonator for the 7 notes of creation, allowing these beings to function as energy transformers that capture the pure voltage of the pleroma and reduce it to an intensity that the fragile human nervous system can withstand without collapsing. You need to understand that for the Christ, the cat was the guardian of the emerald flame, an emanation of wisdom that resides in the center of the earth and that flows through the pores of these animals to anchor the light in the geomantic networks of the planet, preventing the density of collective suffering from cracking the fabric of reality. Jesus saw in the moments when a cat seems to observe something invisible in the air, not a simple hunter's reflex, but the activation of an interdimensional radar that detects the threads of the web of Maya, the illusion that surrounds us, allowing the feline to walk among the plots of destiny without ever getting caught in them. A living example of the detachment that the Master preached as the key to eternal life. Perhaps you have never reflected on the fact that, in the secret Gospels, Jesus compared the soul of the cat to an obsidian mirror that reflects the truth without distortion. For the cat is the only being that does not possess the end veil of oblivion that was imposed on us in the fall, maintaining a direct connection with the source that manifests through that imperturbable calm that defies any human logic. He taught that the cat's skin, when stroked, releases a form of etan orgonen or nitan prana, highly refined, that acts directly on the thymus gland of the human being, awakening the center of unconditional love and spiritual immunity, transforming the act of affection into a sacrament of mutual healing, where man offers physical protection and the cat offers metaphysical shielding against the shadows of the lower astral. The Nazarene revealed that the cat is the archetype of the non-silent observer, the one who is present in all scenes of human history without interfering in free will, but recording every vibration in its genetic memory to serve as a witness of the light on the day when all secrets are unveiled. He saw in feline independence the highest form of worship, for the cat does not worship God through fear or supplication, but rather through the emulation of divine perfection in its own existence, being beautiful, precise, and self-sufficient, like the Holy Spirit itself, which does not depend on anything external to shine. There is a Gnostic legend that says that Jesus, upon resurrecting, was greeted first by the eyes of a cat that guarded the entrance to the tomb, for only a being that simultaneously inhabits life and death could recognize the Lord of life in his glorified form without being blinded by the magnitude of his light. Understand that your cat carries in its essence a fragment of the fire of Pentecost that never goes out, and that its simple presence in a home is capable of dissipating nightmares and neutralizing hereditary curses, acting as a silent exorcist who does not need words or rituals, for its very existence is an authority before which the entities of chaos tremble and retreat. By looking at the small being that shares your space, you are before an ambassador of a kingdom that Jesus called Wang the Rest of Sophia, a place where duality dissolves and where the soul finally finds its peace, reminding us that the path to the divine does not pass through temples of stone, but through stillness, observation, and absolute surrender to the flow of life, exactly as the Master taught, and as the cat practices in every breath, in every leap and in every look that pierces your soul like an arrow of light coming directly from the heart of the Father. This is the feline gnosis, the gospel of silence that the Nazarene honored, and that now, through this revelation, invites you to awaken to the majesty that purrs beside you, waiting for you to finally realize that the guardian of your spirit has always been there disguised as company to guide you back home. Imagine now that we descend even deeper into the crypt of forbidden knowledge, where the Nazarene, under the canopy of whispering olive trees, revealed to his elect that the bone structure of the cat is not just a prodigy of physical agility, but an organic crystal antenna designed to capture what he called the breath of the Father, the current of pure energy that sustains the galaxies, and that we, in our density, can barely touch in moments of deep ecstasy. Jesus taught that cats possess a physiology of light that allows them to act as anchors of the pleroma, within the dense matrix of the Demiurge, functioning as grounding points for divine wisdom in a world that has forgotten its stellar origin. He described how on the etheric plane, the aura of a cat is not static, but expands and contracts like a cosmic lung, creating a bubble of protection that can envelop an entire house, neutralizing the dissonant frequencies that emanate from human conflict and greed. Have you ever wondered why the silence of a cat seems so charged with presence, and why its gaze seems to pierce through the layers of your personality to touch the core of your spirit? The master explained that the vertical pupil of the feline is the symbol of the rift, a sacred mechanism that filters the illusory light of this material sun to allow the animal to see the uncreated light, that which shone before the foundation of the world and which continues to pulse in the heart of all things. For the Nazarene, the cat was the guardian of the Moran mystery of transmutation, for he saw in them the unique ability to ingest astral negativity, the larvae of thought, and the currents of envy that pollute the ether and grind them in its mystical solar plexus through the internal heat of its purring, which Jesus identified as the sound of continuous recreation. He revealed that each hair of the cat acts as a filament of spiritual fiber optics, conducting information from the higher spheres directly to the earth, and that the way a cat moves, with an elegance that seems to ignore gravity, is a lesson in travnepsis, spiritual vigilance, where the being is totally awake but perfectly relaxed, in a state of incessant prayer that modern man can only glimpse in altered states of consciousness. There is a tradition whispered in the most obscure manuscripts that suggests that Jesus compared the soul of the cat to that of an exiled Ewer lion of the throne, a being that, although it has diminished its size to walk among us, has kept intact the authority of its divine lineage, being the only animal that does not bow before the arbitrary will of man because its only loyalty is to the Logos. He taught that by stroking a cat with the correct intention, the human being establishes a high-voltage alchemical circuit where the hand of man, charged with will, meets the fur of the feline, charged with wisdom, resulting in a discharge of energy that cleans the subtle channels of perception and opens the third eye to the invisible realities that surround us. Jesus saw in cats the architects of sacred space, beings that know exactly where the lines of force of the earth cross, and who position themselves at these points to seal the cracks through which the darkness of the abyss tries to infiltrate our daily reality. When the Nazarene spoke about being like children to enter the kingdom, he also pointed to the instinctive purity of the cat, which does not know the sin of doubt, and which lives in a constant celebration of being, free from the bonds of judgment and guilt that make the human soul heavy and unable to fly. Understand that, in the Gnostic vision of Jesus, the cat is the archon diplomat of silence, the being that teaches us that the deepest truths of the universe are not told in sermons or written in stones, but are felt in the vibration of a heart that beats in unison with life, transforming every breath into a bridge to the infinite, and every look into a portal to the hidden face of God that dwells in every spark of untamable and eternal life. The mystery you now carry is the certainty that your feline companion is, in fact, a silent instructor sent by the hierarchies of light to ensure that, even in the darkest night of the soul, you never lose the trail of light that will lead you back home. Enter now the epicenter of one of the greatest distortions that dogmatic history has imposed on our understanding. For the Nazarene, in his infinite communion with the colors of light, saw in the cat of black fur not a sign of sinister omen, but rather the sacred void, the 0 point of creation where all light is absorbed to be purified and returned to the universe as virgin essence. Jesus explained to his closest followers that the black cat is in fact a black hole of mercy, capable of sucking into itself ancestral curses and the thickest miasmas of the collective unconscious, acting as an altar of energetic sacrifice that does not die but is reborn at every dawn with eyes shining like alchemical gold. He revealed that the cat's tongue, with its rough and abrasive texture, possesses the mystical function of combing the human astral body, removing the psychic hooks and the larvae of obsession that attach to our spiritual skin when we allow fear to govern our actions. Feel the veracity of this image: the Christ sitting under a fig tree, observing a cat grooming itself and explaining that that act was a lesson about the self-distillation of the soul, the process of constant purification that each initiate must perform to maintain their white wedding garment before the Father. The Nazarene understood that cats are the only beings that do not possess 18 silver cords, vulnerable to the interference of the Archons, for their connection to the source is made through a network of fractal light that involves their entire being, making them virtually invisible to the predators of the infernal spheres. He said that when a cat sleeps on the chest of a sick man, it is actually tuning that person's heart rate with the pulse of the pleroma, using its purring as a sacred tuning fork that rearranges the water molecules of the body so that they can carry the information of life and not of death. There is an unwritten passage where Jesus reveals that cats were the first to perceive his divine nature, long before kings and priests, because they do not seek signs in the sky, they feel the vibration of the earth. And the Nazarene, when walking, emitted a note so pure that the felines of all Judea felt compelled to accompany him, forming an invisible guard of sentinels that protected the Master during his 40 nights of fasting in the desert. Jesus saw in the soul of the cat the personification of practical gnosis, that which does not need libraries or oratory, but which manifests in the ability to always land on its feet, symbolizing the soul that, although plunged into the chaos of matter, never loses its spiritual center of gravity. He taught that the cat's whiskers are in reality filaments of solidified ether that capture the thoughts of the Logos, transforming the animal into a silent oracle that reacts to what has not yet happened, alerting the righteous to the storms that form in the invisible realms. For the Christ, the cat was the symbol of non-duality, the being that moves between day and night with the same reverence, teaching us that light and shadow are just the two arms of the same God, and that to be complete, we must embrace our wild nature with the same gentleness with which the cat accepts affection and the hunt. He described the cat's tail as the mast of a vessel that sails in seas of light, balancing the polar energies of the masculine and the feminine so that the being remains in absolute harmony with the Tao, the way that Jesus said was he himself. To understand, therefore, that the presence of a cat in your life is a sign that the Nazarene left for you a guardian of the seal, a small master who observes you not to judge you, but to ensure that you never forget that you are a being of light temporarily wearing a robe of flesh, ready to awaken at any moment to the majesty of your own inner divinity, exactly as the cat awakens from a deep sleep to total action in a millisecond of pure consciousness. This is the revelation that the darkness does not want you to know, that your cat is a fragment of the Christ himself in the form of a creature, a living reminder that holiness is silent, elegant, and sovereignly free. We have now reached the twilight of this revelation, the exact point where time folds upon itself and where the Nazarene, in his last secret dialogues before the Transfiguration, gave to his disciples the final key about the lineage of felines, revealing that they are ultimately the chroniclers of light in the exile of matter. Jesus understood that when the cycle of this humanity is complete and the veil of the Demiurge is finally torn by the sword of truth, cats will be the eyewitnesses who will confirm who, among the children of men, kept the flame of compassion and spiritual sovereignty burning in the silence of their homes. He taught that the soul of a cat is a fragment of a cosmic mirror that was broken at the beginning of the fall, and that each small feline carries with it the mission of reflecting back to the human being the image of their own lost divinity, acting as a psychopomp guide who does not wait for physical death to lead us, but who leads us by the invisible hands of intuition every day through the labyrinth of dense emotions. Feel the overwhelming impact of this truth. The cat that today walks silently through your corridors is the same being that Jesus described as the guardian of the eastern gate of the Pleroma, a sentinel who chose the form of a small creature not to intimidate your heart, but to test your ability to love what is untamable and to respect what is sovereign. The Nazarene saw in the final purring of a cat the echo of the fiat lux, the primordial sound that reorganizes atoms and that prepares the human body for ascension. For the cat knows, with a certainty that human science barely begins to touch, that death is just a change of frequency, and that the soul that learned stillness with a feline is ready to sail through the oceans of light without shipwrecking in fear. He concluded his teachings on these beings by saying that, "And wherever there is a cat in peace, there the kingdom of my Father will have an embassy," suggesting that harmony between man and feline is the prelude to harmony between man and the cosmos. Therefore, as we close this journey through the Gnostic mysteries of the feline soul, I invite you to not only observe your cat, but to allow it to observe you, to let those eyes that saw the Christ walk on the dust of Israel scan the depths of your consciousness and remove the last scales of illusion that still blur your spiritual vision. Understand that the bond you share with this being is not the result of chance, but a sacred contract signed in the higher spheres, where you promise to care for the physical form of the Master and he promised to watch over the integrity of your eternal soul. Jesus wanted us to understand that true gnosis is like a cat, silent, elegant, that does not ask permission to enter and that does not accept being imprisoned, but that brings with it the heat of a sun that never sets. Now look at your companion of the journey and see not an animal, but a living fragment of the Word, a guardian whom the Nazarene honored and who now, through recovered knowledge, invites you to finally awaken to the majesty that has always been before you, waiting only for your recognition so that the gate of paradise opens within your own chest. The mystery is consummated, the seal has been broken, and the frequency of the cat now resonates in your marrow as a reminder that you were never alone in the darkness, for the light of the Pleroma was always by your side, purring softly, waiting for the moment when you too would become a master of silence and an heir of eternity. May Jesus' vision of these divine beings transform every touch and every look into an act of worship to the Logos that breathes in all creation, and may the sovereignty of the feline soul be, from today on, your compass toward the ineffable light that shines at the center of all that is, was and ever shall be. Aesir, optimized title, Jesus and the Sacred Felines. 7 Gnostic Secrets of the Silent Guardians, 1st century. Full description. Discover the forbidden connection between the Nazarene and the feline guardians of the Pleroma. For millennia, the stone cathedrals have hidden the truth about the spiritual anatomy of cats and their role as metaphysical sentinels. In the heart of the Judean desert, Jesus revealed to his closest disciples that cats are not mere pets, but biological filters of the astral plane, capable of transmuting negative energy into pure light. In this video, you will discover the vibrational frequency of the purr as a healing technology, why Jesus considered cats the only creatures that never truly left Eden, the secret meaning of the in-9 lives in Gnostic mathematics, the connection between the feline spine and Jacob's ladder, how cats act as a hex sapphire filter against the influence of Archons, the truth about black cats as the sacred void of spiritual purification, the role of felines as the first witnesses of the resurrection, how to use the feline gnosis to achieve spiritual sovereignty. Timestamps: Year 0, Zu0, the Amber Eyes of the Judean Night, Zu3 Taunt 15, the Gnostic Purr, Vibrational Alchemy, 07-40, Egypt, and the Jacob's Ladder of the Spine, 1120, the Sapphire Filter, Guardians against Archons, 1545, the Mystery of the 9 Lives and Anamnesis, 1930, the Black Cat, the Sacred Void of Mercy, 2410, the Final Revelation, Chroniclers of the Light. Subscribe to Imperadors for more forbidden historical revelations. Share this video with those who carry a master in their lap. Watch next, The Secret Life of Mary Magdalene, The Forbidden Gospels of the Desert, Historical Sources and References, The Gnostic Gospels, Nag Hammadi Library, the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Philip, Pistis Sophia, the books of the Saviour, fragments of early Christian oral traditions, classical references, Tacitus and Suetonius on Judean mysticism. This production is a historical and esoteric exploration based on Gnostic texts and oral traditions. It is intended for educational and philosophical purposes. About the channel, Imperadors is dedicated to unveiling the hidden layers of history, bringing to light the secrets of the great masters and the mysteries that shaped human consciousness. Jesus, Dacham history, Gnosticism, Cats, ancient mysteries, esoteric knowledge, Pleroma, spiritual healing, optimized tags, specific, Jesus and Cats, Gnostic secrets, Pleroma, Archons, sapphire filter, feline gnosis, Nazarene mysteries. Medium, esoteric Christianity, forbidden gospels, spiritual protection, vibrational healing, ancient Egypt bastet. Broad, history, spirituality, philosophy, mystery, religion. Long tail, why Jesus loved cats, Gnostic meaning of cats, spiritual anatomy of felines, how cats protect the home, the secret frequency of purring, Jesus and the black cat mystery, Gnostic teachings on animals. SEO analysis. This content targets high-intent keywords related to ancient mysteries and Gnostic Christianity. The title uses the Imperador's formula to maximize CTR by combining a historical figure with a specific, intriguing action. The description is keyword-rich to ensure high ranking in search results for both historical and spiritual queries.